at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report for January 3rd, 2018. This is the 8th year of Cheongi, the 11th month, and the 17th day by the heavenly calendar. I'm Tim Elder here with Greg Knoll, and for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyung Moon. And let's start with our weather. It's 2 degrees below zero right now, and clear in the Cheongguk area right now, 2 degrees below zero. Still not 20. Still not 20. It's not so bad. And we're expecting to go up to a high of 27 degrees, so we're going to stay below freezing for the day. And we're still going through this sunshine mixing with clouds for the day. We're still going through this period of cold right now, and that's going to continue for a few more days. In fact, it's going to get even colder during the weekend. As I said, today we're expecting a high of 27. Tomorrow, 24. Friday, 11 will be our daytime high. And then Saturday, 9, single-digit daytime high. And then on Sunday, it'll warm up to 19 degrees. And on Monday, we'll finally get above freezing. Slightly above freezing.
Weather.
T-shirt weather, 34 degrees. And then the nighttime low temperatures are also going to be quite low. 11 degrees tonight, 4 degrees Thursday into Friday. And then Friday into Saturday, it'll go down to 1 degree below zero. And then Saturday into Sunday, 5 degrees below zero. And then again on Sunday, it'll be better. Sunday going into Monday, 14 degrees. And then Monday, of course, will reach a daytime high of 34 degrees. That's at least the current forecast. So we still have several more days of this cold, and we have a wind chill watch in effect from Thursday. Actually, that's going to start from Thursday, as I said. So that's when it's really going to, when that Arctic vortex, I guess, is going to come down and really make things much colder than they even are right now. So let's warm our hearts right now with a wonderful Rima. And I do have a wonderful Rima today.
Really?
You know, I tend to get the doom and gloom,
Judges,
judgments,
Daniel,
Rimas,
yeah.
watch out, I'm coming for you, Rimas. But today we have a wonderful, wonderful Rima. Psalm 136. Oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endureth forever. Oh, give thanks unto the God of gods, for his mercy endureth forever. Oh, give thanks to the Lord of lords, for his mercy endureth forever. To him who alone doeth great wonders, for his mercy endureth forever. To him that by wisdom made the heavens, for his mercy endureth forever. To him that stretched out the earth above the waters, for his mercy endureth forever. To him that made great lights, for his mercy endureth forever. The sun to rule by day, for his mercy endureth forever. The moon and stars to rule by night, for his mercy endureth forever. To him that smote Egypt in their firstborn, for his mercy endureth forever, and brought out Israel from among them, for his mercy endureth forever. With a strong hand and with a stretched out arm, for his mercy endureth forever. To him which divided the Red Sea into parts, for his mercy endureth forever, and made Israel to pass through the midst of it, for his mercy endureth forever. But overthrew Pharaoh and his host in the Red Sea, for his mercy endureth forever. To him which led his people through the wilderness, for his mercy endureth forever. To him who smote great kings, for his mercy endureth forever, and slew famous kings, for his mercy endureth forever. Sihon, king of the Amorites, for his mercy endureth forever, and Og, the king of Bashan, for his mercy endureth forever. And gave their land for an heritage, for his mercy endureth forever. Even an heritage unto Israel his servant, for his mercy endureth forever. Who remembered us in our low estate, for his mercy endureth forever. And hath redeemed us from our enemies, for his mercy endureth forever. Who giveth food to all flesh, for his mercy endureth forever. O give thanks unto the God of heaven, for his mercy endureth forever.
Ah, Jew.
That is a wonderful psalm.
Yeah.
Yes. His mercy endureth forever. And give thanks to the Lord God. Give thanks to the God. So this is a poem or a psalm where the author just goes through basically from Genesis. And okay, he left out Noah, but he focuses on the Exodus, but really just going through history, and saying, God has given us so much to be thankful for.
God is faithful.
God is faithful. And what I want to point out in connection with this psalm is that we are coming upon a tremendous blessing that really shows that God's mercy endures forever, and that we really must give great thanks for. That, of course, is the blessing that is coming up on February 28th. That would be by the heavenly calendar, be year 9 of the Cheongi era, and then the first month and 13th day. And this is the blessing, of course, that Father wanted to give in 2013. That is the 4th year of Cheongi. But it is also the blessing that God wanted to give 6,000 years ago. This is the blessing that God wanted to give 6,000 years ago.
In the garden.
In the garden, yes. Of course, Adam and Eve, that blessing was given in September 23rd of Adam and Eve. But this would be the children of Adam and Eve, the grandchildren of Adam and Eve, grandchildren of God, that God really wanted to see in the Garden of Eden and could not see, because of the fall. So this is really happening for the first time in human history. This is the blessing that God has looked forward to for 6,000 years. So it's a tremendous blessing, and it shows that His mercy truly endures forever, that He is faithful, and that we truly have a tremendous amount to be grateful for. We could take this psalm and we could add on to it, couldn't we?
1,000 verses.
1,000 verses. Even in each of our lives, we could go through our lives and say, "Oh, His mercy endureth forever. Oh, He saved me there. His mercy endureth forever." We could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
But this upcoming blessing is really the final conclusion, pinnacle,
yeah,
of that. And we will sing God's praises forever and ever. But as I was pointing out yesterday, to whom much is given, much will be required. It's also a very serious time. So let's prepare our hearts. And if we receive this blessing and then betray this blessing later on, then it will be worse than if we had never received the blessing in the first place, I believe. So let's keep that in mind. It's freely given. It's freely given, but don't betray it.
Yeah, I've been reflecting the last few days on God's mercy. Goes right along with this Rima that, that really is all of our hope, is that we do not deserve what we've been given, especially the blessing coming up. So I think, all of ourselves, our brothers and sisters, we always have to remain hopeful that we can repent and come back to God. I think that is a fundamental nature of God, is if we're sincere and if we repent, then we can come back to God. There's always a pathway back to God. I think of Saul, St. Paul. Of course, that's probably the most extreme example, but it illustrates God's mercy, because here is a man that was killing the elect Christians, the most faithful followers of Jesus, the early followers of Jesus. He was actually sentencing them and them to death. And then based on his experience, his awakening, then he was able to repent and come back to God and be an instrument of God for many years. And ultimately, he died at the hands of the Romans. So, that's a lot of hope in a way, because no matter how far people have fallen away, there is a pathway back, and that shows God's mercy. And so I think all the brothers and sisters that have followed Father faithfully for 40 years sometimes, this is an opportunity, February 28th, to come back to Father and to uplift Father as Christ.
Yes.
And to, no matter what the past was, this is a new beginning. This is an opportunity.
Yes. Yes, the King's ruling is that any heterosexual adult couple may participate in this blessing. So those, as Greg just mentioned, who have not returned to True Father's authority can do so through this blessing. People who are newly witnessed to, who are just learning the principle and are just preparing for the blessing for the first time, they can participate in this blessing.
Single people too, right?
Well, single people can take the holy wine.
The holy wine, yeah.
Yes, not the blessing.
Right.
Yes. You got to have a partner to be blessed. Yes. Single people can take that holy wine, and that would be sort of a preparation for a future blessing. Mm-hmm. But even taking the holy wine gives a condition for God to work in your life, and so it is a good idea. And certainly children, parents should also give the holy wine, this new holy wine, that is now being passed around the world now. It has already gone out to some countries around the world and some continents, and we're sending it out more and more.
I think by the end of next week, we'll have vials that we can ship pretty much all over.
Okay, great.
Yeah, by the end of next week, I would say.
That's great. And of course, that holy wine can be taken before February 28th. Mm. Yes, you don't have to. We're not going to sit there and say, okay, ready, set, drink, and all around the world we drink it at once. Not going to be like that. As it was in 2012 and 2013, as I remember, the holy wine at that time turned out to be false holy wine, was poison wine. But anyway, it was passed out through the churches at that time, and people were taking it prior to the blessing. And that was Father's decision then. Father made many decisions regarding the February 2013 blessing prior to his passing, prior to his ascension. Unfortunately, the Han Mother and the Archangel Satan usurped those decisions and twisted them to make that event serve their purpose and interest, and made that event take away all of our blessings. This is a point that Family Federation people need to understand. The second king, Hyung is not denying your blessing. Your blessing was stolen from you by the Han Mother and by Satan in February 2013. And it is being restored by the second king. He is giving you a chance. He is giving you a path back to Father.
And God's mercy, yeah.
With God's mercy, yes. And that needs to be understood very clearly. And this will not be the only time that people can receive this blessing. In the future, all of humanity, all 7 billion people alive today, all the people who lived in the past, and all first-generation people in the future will have to receive this blessing in order to enter the kingdom of heaven. And of course, eventually, we believe. I've talked with Christians who disagree, but we believe that and I know that True Father expressed often that our goal is to offer up to God a creation that does not have even the slightest vestige of sin. Mm. No evil, no sin. Mm-hmm. That was the goal that Father. I won't say no evil. I'll take that back. But that this is the goal that Father expressed many times. That that's a pretty big goal. that is the goal that that Father, I believe, has set for himself. So, and I speak with some Christians about this, and they disagree. That once you make your choice here in this life, if you go to hell, then as a result of your choices in this life, then you're going to stay in hell for eternity. And of course, that means that hell will eternally be a part of God's creation, even though God didn't create it. So I have a problem with that, and I believe that goes against what Father taught us. I believe. I don't think there can be an eternal hell. Father, in fact, liberated hell.
Yeah, I would think God's nature is that would cause way too much pain for God.
Yes, of course.
To have a hell.
Yeah.
So I think eventually the goal is all people will be liberated.
So that is why I say that.
In fact, I received insight the other day that my first assignment when I go to meet Father in the spirit world, he'll say, "Go to hell," because that's where his heart is. God will want to liberate all the brothers and sisters in hell, and so he'll want me to go there to help.
That was actually the teaching of Reverend Sudo. In our workshops in Berrytown. I can't remember if it was in the 40-day or 120-day workshop, but this is what his teaching was. Of course, expressing Father's teaching at that time, that Father, when we go to spirit, will send us to hell, but when we go to hell, we will find God there. Yeah. Because God is in hell.
Yeah, it's tragic.
Let's see how Christians deal with that. So anyway, we're getting off, but anyway, the blessing will be given on February 28th to as many people who will respond. And, of course, we're going to try to get the news out to everyone. And please help us do that, that this is the time. This is the Book of Life registration blessing. All right?
Book of Life.
Book of Life registration blessing.
Awesome.
Book of Life registration blessing.
The Bible talks a lot about the Book of Life.
Yes, it does.
There's like at least,
and you want your name there.
Yes, about 8 passages in the Old and New Testament and Revelations where it talks about, the Book of Life. It's a profound blessing. We have no idea. We cannot comprehend the significance of having your name in the Book of Life.
Yes.
How unworthy we are, right, to receive that. My God, talk about God's mercy.
Yes.
So I think this also applies. All the couples that have been blessed under True Father's authority should come to Newfoundland and receive this
if
perfection.
Possible, yes, if possible.
Yeah, it's not mandatory, but
mandatory.
It's certainly what a wonderful opportunity to celebrate this blessing with the second king and queen.
And people have to look wisely at their financial situation and stuff like that. But if you can create the funds to come to Newfoundland, that's fantastic. And anyone who can come probably should come, because I think this venue here will be filled with God's Spirit.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait.
I assure you will experience Father. You will experience God in a way that you've never experienced Him before. In this venue, then
Father's
on
very
February
excited.
28th. Father's very excited. God is very excited. He's been waiting for this for 6,000 years to be able to. He's blessed his children, Adam and Eve, on September 23rd. That was the 8th month and 4th day by the heavenly calendar. But now he's going to bless the next generation, the children and grandchildren.
And to be among that first blessing, the first perfection level blessing is such an honor and such a privilege that we can't really have the words to express that.
So don't go and betray it afterwards.
That's right.
That's always have to be careful, because God, and I've seen this many times where, in my 40 some years in the following Father, I've seen us receive God's blessing freely given so many times, not just the marriage blessing, but other blessings that God gives us. And it's always sad to see people betray those blessings later on. But as we were saying yesterday, the higher you go, the further you have to fall. Adam and Eve fell to below the rest of creation, and that's where the restoration had to begin. So let's not go there again.
Got you.
Let's go to our Cheonsongyong Rima, which is from the, let me see here, try to bring it up here. Okay. It is from the book on the Trans-Pacific Providence, the Pacific Era Providence, and it is on chapter 5, and I'm here on page 1971. Father is talking about the role of the peninsula civilization from the principal perspective. History as a whole is really interesting. When you consider the birthplace of a culture, you will see that seaports and peninsulas where the land meets the ocean became the cradles of civilization. By the same token, when you consider the birthplace of ancient cultures like the Greek and Italian civilizations, you will see that they were in proximity to a large sea, peninsula, or river. It is a historical fact that civilizations developed from such places. Why is this so? It is because such places are merging points. We can generally understand that all things are created through the harmony of coming together. Now, you may think, wait a second, the second king is creating the Chonigu culture, but he's not on a peninsula. He's not by the sea. He's not at a port. But think about it. Look at the people who have come here. We have people from, I don't know how many different countries who have come to the Newfoundland congregation. What do we have? Of course, we have, Americans of various ethnic background, but we also have people who are first-generation immigrants from Vietnam, from Lebanon, from Egypt. What else? Germany, from Korea, Japan, of course. This is really, in a sense, a merging point. God has created it that way.
A melting pot.
A melting pot, yes. And so this, I think, fits this description where new cultures, new civilizations come from places where people are merging. And of course, throughout history, peninsulas have served that role, but we also here are in that kind of an environment, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also we have to take into consideration that this is the tribulation.
Yes.
It's a different era where this, at least I think most people here feel very protected by God's hedge of protection. There's Pike County in particular is, I think, one of the safest places in the world from nuclear disaster, from tidal waves, from earthquakes, a whole range of natural calamities as well as man-made calamities. And I think there's a reason for that the seed of God needs to be protected at all costs. Mm-hmm. So I think Father really guided the brothers here and the king so that the seed, it was paramount that the seed is protected, so that no harm comes to God's lineage during tribulation. We really still don't know, even though Trump is making incredible headway, we really don't know what's ahead. And I think paramount in God's strategy is to protect the seed.
But let's still keep our guns on us.
That's part of the protection. God working through conceal and carry.
Yes. Yes. But it certainly is true that civilizations develop from merging points where different peoples come together. So the peninsula, of course, has the ocean on three sides, so it's easy to approach. That means it's vulnerable to invasion, as Korea can tell you, 1,000 times over a 5,000-year history.
Japan is very vulnerable. And,
Japan was actually protected by the sea.
Not anymore, but
yes, but Japan historically, an island country, is actually protected by the sea. So even the Mongol invasion, for example, they tried to invade Japan, but the winds, the Mongols happened. They weren't very good at navies. All right, they were good at armies, but not very good at navies. And so they built these ships and they sailed them during the typhoon season. And so the wind came and blew them all away, and that's where the term kamikaze or god wind comes from. Oh, okay. Because Japan was actually about to be conquered by the Mongols, but then twice actually the invasions were thwarted by what they call the god winds or kamikaze, which are actually typhoons.
Oh, interesting.
So Japan was protected by the sea. But the peninsula is not protected because you're connected to the continent at one end, and so you can be invaded by from the continent. You can be invaded by the sea from three sides, and so forth. So, so there's a difference between the island and a peninsula. But yes, we are like the peninsula here in that we are a merging point. We are a merging point for many different civilizations, and God has gathered those people. I hope I didn't miss any other countries.
You did, but it's
Thailand, Cambodia. I'm sorry, Cambodia. Oh my goodness, that would have been terrible. Who else?
Australia is an island.
Australia. Yes, Australia. New Zealand. Who else? Africa. We have a couple of
Africa,
Nigeria,
South America.
Nigeria. Brazil. Boy, I almost really. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for saving my life. Brazil, yes, Brazil. Nigeria, I think, and Congo,
America,
Panama.
Yeah,
be here soon.
Yeah.
Mexico, yes, Mexico, Adelaide, and
Alaska.
Is Alaska a country?
Kind of.
Kind of, okay. Anyway,
It's
we have
another
many
world.
different countries. Yes, we have many different countries. Ted will say he represents UK. All right, UK.
Right.
I hear him saying that. I can hear him spiritually. Okay. All right. So let's go on. And others, all right, just to cover myself. And others. I'm covered with that. All right, let's take a break, and we'll come back, start going through the news from a Chonic perspective.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Boy, wasn't that fun shooting this Tommy gun today?
It's always fun shooting Tommy guns. This one especially, it's just absolutely gorgeous.
All polished and chromed up. It really looks like $1 million.
Yeah. Elliot Ness would have loved one of those.
Yeah, and it's available right now in your favorite dealer, and you go pick one up.
Yeah, just have him call your distributor.
I mean, the gun, was initially made way back when, back in the 27 is this one.
Yeah, model
But
27.
I was surprised by how quick it knocked down those plates.
Oh, 3.5 second run, under 3.5 second run, knocking down a plate right. 341.
I mean, the gun is heavy. It's about, 12, 14 pounds, especially with this drum, but it's surprising how quick you can go with it. It would actually make quite a good self-defense rifle at home.
If I climbed in somebody's window and they were aiming that at me, I think I'd get out of there real quick. So
That sounds about right to me.
Just the intimidation factor alone.
Fire!
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for January 3rd, 2018, Wednesday morning. and Tim Elder and Greg Nolan for the second king of Chanuguk, Hyung Moon. Let's look at this top story in Breitbart. Constitutional crisis, deep state versus Donald Trump administration over transgender individuals in the military. And look at this photograph. Look at this photograph. You got 4 officers in the United States military sitting there. But these are guys.
They certainly look like guys.
Aren't they? These are not women. They're dressed like women. 2 of them have skirts on. One even has his legs crossed in a very ladylike manner. But he ain't a she, I'm pretty sure. Lord of mercy.
Oh,
His mercy endureth forever.
I'm just kind of speechless.
The left and the media are presenting a decision by elements of the Trump administration to not secure an immediate stay in court as a win by LGBTQ forces to seek to force President Donald Trump, America's commander-in-chief, to accept transgender recruits into the military. But it might not be as big a win as they would have hoped for, as conservative forces rally behind the president with a variety of plans to crush the short-term leftist victory, though it does remain to be seen if the administration's various departments responsible, primarily Justice and Defense, will follow through on efforts to get Trump another win. As of January 2, that's yesterday, thanks to lower court rulings blocking implementation of President Trump's directive to the Department of Defense, transgender individuals can legally enlist in the U.S. military. This is in direct contravention of an order the Commander-in-Chief handed down to Defense Secretary James Mattis back in August, one that has been challenged in court and blocked by a district judge by a preliminary injunction while the case is ongoing. On appeal, 2 U.S. courts of appeal, the Fourth Circuit and the D.C. Circuit, upheld 2 lower courts' preliminary injunctions blocking Trump's transgender ban on military enlistment. Perhaps most importantly, it sets up a potential constitutional crisis, George Rasley of Richard Vigory's conservative HQ told Breitbart News. The judge's order directing President Trump to enlist transgenders into the military is a constitutional crisis of the first order, Rasley said in an email. From usurping the administration's immigration powers to the powers of the commander-in-chief, federal judges have attempted coup after coup against Donald Trump. If the president and his lawyers do not fight back more aggressively, there will be no presidential power that these left-wing judges will not attempt to seize for themselves. Shocking many conservatives and Trump supporters, the Department of Justice and Defense Department did not seek a stay from the U.S. Supreme Court, which will likely eventually hear the case and perhaps grant a stay nullifying the lower court's block while the legal process plays itself out. That decision appears to be a questionable one, and many conservatives and Trump supporters are baffled at why the Trump administration's DOJ would not step forward and press this issue right this second. Elaine Donnelly of the Center for Military Readiness said in a lengthy statement issued Tuesday, under Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution, the federal courts have no authority to make policy regarding the military. The Department of Justice should have protected the constitutional rights of President Donald J. Trump by filing an emergency appeal with the Supreme Court immediately after the District of Columbia and Fourth Circuit Courts of Appeals denied requests for stays of lower court preliminary injunctions. The issue is not the military transgender policy alone, but who gets to decide what the policy will be. By failing to petition the Supreme Court to stay the lower court orders, the DOJ has tacitly conceded that federal judges can make military policy and establish medical standards for enlistments. According to Reuters, a Justice Department official who requested anonymity noted that the Defense Department has set up a study to review the issue. Rather than litigate this interim appeal before that occurs, the administration has decided to wait for the DOD's study and continue to defend the president's lawful authority in district court in the meantime. This is a lame excuse making as much sense as the 2016 Trump campaign allowing the Federal Election Commission to declare Hillary Clinton the winner of the presidential race early on election night, relying on vote counts coming in later to undo that result. The DOJ's reported strategy might be plausible if the Defense Department study in question were truly fact-based and objective, and if the DoD had taken steps to provide conditional enlistment contracts with transgender personnel who are recruited under the force of federal court orders. Neither expectation has been met. Chris Hull, the Executive Vice President of the Center for Security Policy, who previously served as Chief of Staff to Representative Steve King, Republican of Iowa, is similarly upset. These individuals suffer from a serious mental illness with suicide rates of up to 40%, which is 8 times as high as the rate among schizophrenics who are barred from military service, Hull told Breitbart News. We already have a problem with suicide in the military without actively recruiting those among the most likely to die at their own hands. But per the Department of Justice, they are following the instructions of the Department of Defense and the White House. The Pentagon is, per the DOJ, working on a new study on the matter, and things are on hold until then and until the next stages of litigation. The Department of Defense has announced that it will be releasing an independent study of these issues in the coming weeks, DOJ spokeswoman Sarah Isgur Flores told Breitbart News. So rather than litigate this interim appeal before that occurs, the administration has decided to wait for DOD's study and will continue to defend the President's and Secretary of Defense's lawful authority in district court in the meantime. In other words, DOJ lawyers are just like the lawyers for their clients, trying to formulate a legal strategy that they think will win their client's case. But by no means has the DOJ abandoned the case, and it is still fighting to defend the legality of the President's directive. Sources close to the matter and with direct knowledge tell Breitbart News that the issue came up at a National Security Council principals meeting on Tuesday, and the senior-most officials in the Trump administration are seeking a pathway forward to dealing with this matter. Sources close to the process have told Breitbart News that there may be a better option on the table for the president if he wants to succeed here, and it involves a strategy laid out for him by several top conservative leaders. A letter sent to President Trump signed by various military and law enforcement conservative leaders, including President Ronald Reagan's Attorney General Ed Meese, lays out a new pathway forward for President Trump to block transgender individuals from serving in the military. Meese and other conservative leaders wrote to President Trump before the new year. As you know, several district judges have recently ordered the Department of Defense to begin, this is Meese's letter, to begin enlisting individuals who identify as transgender into the military on January 2, 2018. These orders are not only at odds with your directive of August 25, 2017 to the Secretary of Defense and with respect to the Coast Guard to the Secretary of Homeland Security precluding such a change in policy. It is also a judicial intrusion upon your exclusive authority as Commander-in-Chief pursuant to Article 2 of the Constitution and a dangerous affront to your responsibility to determine the makeup and disposition of the nation's armed forces. Unfortunately, this is not the only example of unacceptable infringements on your presidential powers. Courts have been eager to strike down your immigration-related executive orders with politically motivated rulings. Moreover, as Bloomberg reported yesterday in a news report headlined, Washington bureaucrats are quietly working to undermine Trump's agenda, others in the government have been emboldened to subvert your administration and policies. We believe strongly that your decision to prevent additional enlistment of individuals who identify as transgender in the U.S. Armed Forces is fully justified in light of the grave harm such a policy change would portend for the readiness, morale, unit cohesion, and funding challenges facing our military. In addition, it would be a most dangerous precedent to have the judiciary interjecting itself into your exclusive constitutional command authority and responsibility to create a right to serve where there is none, let alone extending that right to people whose medical condition and requirements are, as a practical matter, incompatible with military service and a burden on an already stressed military budget. They continue in the letter to President Trump by noting that there is a different pathway forward for him that would take the power away from activist judges attempting to nullify his presidency and allow him to move forward with implementation on his ban on transgender individuals enlisting in the U.S. military. the conservative leaders wrote to President Trump as follows. To allow this court order to stand, moreover, would be to invite the judiciary to trespass further on your executive authority and the chain of command. Predictably, it would also empower government employees to ignore presidential direction with profound and adverse implications for the republic. In the interest of avoiding such intolerable consequences and preventing avoidable harm from being inflicted on the armed forces with the initiation of enlistments of individuals who identify as transgender, we recommend that you immediately issue a new directive to the Secretaries of Defense and Homeland Security along the lines of the attached. It simply preserves your authority and responsibility to establish accession standards for military service pending the outcome of ongoing litigation. In addition to Meese, the other signers of the letter included a bunch of people. Taking this new action would supersede the old executive action. That draft text, also obtained by Breitbart News, would allow transgender individuals to serve in the military only during the time frame in which this court case will make its way through the court system, from the district court level all the way up through the appeals court to the Supreme Court if necessary. Their enlistment contracts would include specific provisions that they may not avail themselves of sex change surgeries or other expensive medical options at taxpayer expense during this time, and that they will immediately be discharged from the military if and when the administration prevails in court. Doing it this way, as well, allows time for the Department of Justice to build its case out with evidence at the district court level, evidence that will eventually be considered in the very likely event that the U.S. Supreme Court eventually considers this case. This order will likely be challenged as well. But by resetting the clock this way, a Supreme Court decision on the president's policy would likely not come down before 2019, when it is very possible that the court will have one or two more consecutive conservative justices in place of the potentially retiring Anthony Kennedy and the aging Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Is she ever going to die? Come on. Only the good die young, I guess. In other words, Trump could sign a new order immediately with language close to what Meese and company are suggesting very soon. Then the same judges at both the district court and appeals court levels that blocked Trump's directive from implementation would predictably block this one. The new order would replace the old one, and this new one would become the focus of the court case. Solicitor General Noel Francisco, the Justice Department official responsible for preparing the DOJ's legal strategy here, would then ask the Supreme Court for a stay on the lower court order blocking implementation, and by the time those actions have passed, no transgender individuals, or at least very few, would have gotten into the military, and the case would not be on the Supreme Court docket until 2019, rather than this year in 2018. Again, it all remains to be seen what President Trump, the DOJ, and the Department of Defense will do here in the end. The DOJ and White House have not responded to specific requests for comment about this letter and plan, but the fact that Meese, a former U.S. Attorney General for President Reagan, is signed on to this letter lends significant credibility to the idea that President Trump, whose sources say had read their letter and is considering their ideas, may move forward with such a strategy. So anyway, legal strategy is complicated, trying to guess who's going to die when or retire when. But the whole idea of transgenders in the military is obviously undermining America's military readiness and strength, preparedness. We're not going to, Kim Jong-un must be laughing. Xi Jinping must be laughing. Xi Jinping, I'm sure, maybe he's not laughing. Maybe he's just, how could they be so stupid, How can they just give up the fight? We're working hard here to build a military that can defeat the United States, and they're just going to forfeit? What's the fun in that? Maybe that's what Xi Jinping is thinking.
It's a serious question in military readiness. The closeness of the of people fighting in real battles. Mm-hmm. It has to be a close-knit operation. Mm-hmm. It can't be distracted by this kind of silliness, this kind of stupidity. I think a bigger issue is how these lower courts can disrupt the rule of the land. Mm-hmm. I think this is a serious issue.
Well, I think through U.S. history, things have gone back and forth. I mean, you have three branches of government, and the power has sort of shifted back and forth over the years. And right now, we're at a time when we're at a point in U.S. history where the judiciary is trying to is trying very hard to assert its power against the executive. And, the executive pushing back. And this is part of the back and forth of history, I think. But, yeah, it is important that the executive push back because they're obviously going way too far.
Now, one potential brilliant strategy is to do exactly what President Trump is doing and not responding right away so that the issues are fleshed out in the media. I mean, he is really a master of communication and exposing things. So by not really doing anything initially, it's allowing people like this kind of article to get out there so people can understand what the issue is. Sometimes if you respond too quickly, then that kind of exposure is not really fleshed out.
That's true, too, yeah.
So it might be part of Trump's strategy to let the public know, let mainstream media expose itself, and let the conservatives expose themselves in this battle, and then come back with some kind of decision.
But these are the last days, folks. These are the last days. Can you imagine?
But that picture does tell it all, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? Yeah. I mean, they're trying to pretend that there's something that they're not. And just because you have an operation and you stick something on, you take something off, you still have, X and Y chromosomes.
Yeah. It's denying, the king said it well, it's denying your first God-given calling.
Yeah, well, it's also junk science. I mean, scientifically ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's why the suicide rate is so high, and, you can just see it all over the faces there that there's an issue here.
Do they look like they're contemplating suicide? I don't know.
Very possible.
Possibly. Yeah, and this author points out that schizophrenics are not allowed to serve in the military.
Yeah, that was a very good point.
And transgenders have a higher suicide rate than schizophrenics. So if schizophrenics cannot serve, how is it that transgenders can serve? And then is the court going to say then you have to accept schizophrenics, that they have a right to serve? Does everybody have there is no right to serve.
Right.
It's a privilege to serve. And the military accepts some people, and it does not accept other people. It says, hey, you're, I don't know what they say. Sometimes you're too short, or you're sick.
Fat. I mean, really, fat people are not allowed into the military.
And you go through basic training. I guess you have to. I didn't go to the military. I'm sorry. I guess you have to pass basic training, right?
Well, they don't even accept you if you got a problem with one of your eyes, for example, or if you have depression in your history.
Right to serve.
Yeah.
Right to serve. Right? The courts have come up with a new right, another new right. They're amending the Constitution. They're adding a new right to the Bill of Rights.
People's lives are at stake, and if the military is divided in this kind of way, it's not good for people's safety. It's much more important to protect the entire armed forces than to protect the so-called rights of these individuals.
But there is no right to serve. I mean, fundamentally, let's make that clear. It's a privilege to serve.
Yeah,
it's a privilege to serve, and that privilege is given to some and not to others. You have to qualify for that privilege.
That's always the way it's been. Yeah,
and the president gets to decide the medical standards. Now, the commander-in-chief gets to decide the medical standards, And so if the commander-in-chief says, people who are not sure what sex they are or pretend they're something when they're the other, we're not going to accept those. That's his right as the commander-in-chief. Commander-in-chief. I mean, when is the commander-in-chief not able to command?
Right. It's a dangerous slippery slope. If you allow this to pass, then what about the 72 other different types of genders?
Exactly.
People coming in as unicorns.
Yes.
Would have to be accepted.
I'm not sure what their suicide rate is, but
or some of the other gender. You'd have to allow all sorts of deviants into the military, and this would create incredibly, like they said, the morale of the military is absolutely critical to have successful military force.
Okay, let's go on to Iran again, because I want to really pay close attention to Iran. The demonstrations there are continuing. They're in. Yesterday was their sixth day. So let's go to a Washington Post article on that situation that was filed yesterday evening at 7:20 p.m. Iranian authorities confronting widening, at times violent, street protests Tuesday, centered in the country's provinces, which have traditionally been a pillar of government support and prime recruiting ground for security forces. 6 days of demonstrations have left at least 20 people dead, including 9 on Tuesday, and appear driven by Iranian workers who have clashed with security forces in locations around the country. The protests, chants, and attacks on government buildings have broken taboos in a system that brooks little dissent. The protesters, quote, are angry and they're mobilized. I think it poses a problem for the regime in terms of its ability to respond to the geographic spread of these protests, unquote, said Nader Hashemi, director of the Center for Middle East Studies at Denver University. And this is what we're seeing right now, that the protests are not concentrated in the capital, in Tehran. Mm-hmm. They're occurring in cities, even towns, small towns across the country. Mm-hmm. And so it's difficult for the country, difficult for the government to suppress them, because they're so diverse. Yeah. And there's no real leadership either. And so different people are calling. The demands are also very a wide variety. Apparently, this first began because of being disgruntled over some rise in prices or something like that. But also some people are calling for changes in the foreign policy. Don't support Hezbollah. Take care of Iran before you take care of Syria. But other people are also demanding an end to the theocratic government. So they're actually challenging the very basis of Iran's political establishment. What began last week as an expression of frustration over Iran's sluggish economy has broadened to include open defiance of the national Islamic leadership itself. And what happened to that $1.7 billion that Obama gave you? Yeah. Where's my share? Mm-hmm. I don't know if anyone's saying that. The demonstrations are the most serious.
Is there any accountability to that $1.7 billion that you and I gave
of course not.
To Iran?
Of course not. It's gone. It's gone. Demonstrations are the most serious.
Actually, the tragedy is it probably supports terrorists. Well, our money.
Of course, part of it went to Hezbollah. I'll guarantee you that.
So we're actually funding terrorism. The United States taxpayers are funding terrorism throughout the world.
And this is why.
Thank you, Mr. Obama.
8 years of Obama, it couldn't get rid of ISIS in Syria. But 1 year of Trump was more than enough to do that job. Mm-hmm. And people say, but that was by a strategy that Obama set up. Okay, so Obama set up a strategy that was going to make Trump look good. Is that what you're telling us? All right, whatever you want to believe. What began last week as an expression of frustration, we did that, okay. The demonstrations are the most serious challenge to the leadership of the Islamic Republic since massive street protests over election results in 2009, which Obama did not support.
Right.
And Leon Panetta, who was Obama's CIA chief, is calling him out, saying former Secretary, I'm jumping now to a Breitbart article, former Secretary of Defense and Central Intelligence Agency Director Leon Panetta told CNN's Jake Tapper on Tuesday evening that his old boss, then President Barack Obama, should have done more to support the Iran protests of 2009. In 2009, Obama infamously refused to back the Green Revolution, telling reporters that, quote, we respect Iranian sovereignty and want to avoid the United States being the issue inside of Iran, unquote. Many former Obama advisors continue to believe that the U.S. should not support protests against the Iranian regime, telling Donald Trump this week to be quiet rather than backing the demonstrators. Telling Donald Trump to be quiet. Good luck. Yeah, that's going to work. Tapper asked Panetta, as the CIA director at the time, to comment on Obama's stance. In retrospect, Tapper, let me ask you about the last time there was mass protest in Iran in 2009, when you were in the Obama administration. Do you think the Obama administration dropped the ball by not more aggressively standing with the protesters, whether on its own or in Congress with our European allies and others? Panetta, well, I remember that moment. that movement. It was a much larger protest than what we are having today. It was based on the Green Party and what happened in the election then. I do think that was, and I do think that was an appropriate time for the United States to have sent a clearer message that we stand by those who try to represent the rights of people. That's what the United States is all about. And it would have been important to have sent that message at that time. Obama's Secretary of Defense at that time, Robert Gates, has also said that the Obama administration should have sided with the protesters in 2009. So anyway, so as Panetta said, the protests are not as large today as they were in 2009, and also the Israeli intelligence is saying that they are not yet at a point where they can threaten the regime. But the fact is, though, that the regime is having a difficult time bringing an end to these protests.
Yeah, it's just beginning.
Yeah, they would like to clamp down on them, and they have the ability to, and the will to clamp down on them very harshly. Mm-hmm. But the protests are so spread out so much across the country that they're finding it difficult to do that. Mm-hmm. You can't kill everybody.
Right. Yeah. That's what ultimately has to happen in China, and these kind of the rebellion has to happen in small towns throughout the region.
Right, going back to the Washington Post, so in comparison with 2009, today you're not just dealing with Tehran, that's the capital city, you're dealing with small rural towns across the country where the regime's ability to deploy security forces is much less effective. Hashemi said, that's the guy in Denver, I don't think they planned for this type of broad-based revolt. The latest bloodshed occurred in towns around the central city of Isfahan, about 275 miles south of the capital Tehran. State television said 6 of the latest casualties occurred during an attack on police station in Kadirijan, which state media said involved protesters trying to steal guns. You see, they're trying to arm themselves. Yeah. Better watch out. Yeah, dictators, once the people get arms, you got to watch out. An 11-year-old boy and a 20-year-old man were killed in the town of Khomenisar, and a member of the Revolutionary Guard Corps was killed in the town of Najafabad, state television also reported. In his first remarks on the unrest, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, posted comments on his official website Tuesday saying the protests were encouraged by the country's enemies, often used as shorthand for the United States, their allies, and anti-government Iranian exiles. In recent days, enemies of Iran used different tools, including cash, weapons, $1.7 billion, which you got, not the protesters, weapons, politics, and intelligence apparatus to create troubles for the Islamic Republic, said the statement from Khamenei. It made no comment on how security forces would confront the demonstration, saying only that he will address the nation when the time is right. But other top officials have called for a harsher security response. Khamenei's claim of outside involvement in the protests suggested that he viewed the events as more than a domestic upheaval, and his assertion could presage much tougher measures. In Washington, the Trump administration accused Iranian authorities of blocking electronic communications used by demonstrators and signaled that it might press for new sanctions against Iran because of human rights abuses. Particularly worrisome for Iran's leaders is the spread of the protests into provincial areas, traditionally conservative strongholds, not often drawn in. You've already said that in the first paragraph. By contrast, the mass demonstrations in 2009 were centered in Tehran and spearheaded by middle-class and wealthy supporters of reformist political candidates. Those protesters were outraged by the outcome of the national election, which they said had been stolen by the hardliner Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. But the unrest began last Thursday, in the northern city of Mashhad, was triggered by sharp price increases and other economic troubles. These pressures at home come as Iran has been pursuing an assertive policy abroad, including armed campaigns in Syria and Iraq. And when the West lifted the sanctions against Iran, the people of Iran were expecting some benefits from that, but they're not getting it.
Right.
Someone else is getting it.
Yeah. And now they're such a major threat to Israel.
Right.
And
Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm. And, funding terrorism everywhere. Mm-hmm.
The causes of Iran's economic doldrums are many: top-heavy bureaucracy, big government, mismanagement, and other problems. But some of the current complaints over consumer complaints go back to the conservative government, Ahmadinejad, who was once a hero to many of those now in the streets. Okay, so Yeah, so the demonstrators, as you can see, are trying to arm themselves. They're trying to get into police stations and take arms. Gee, wow. Yeah, what happens when you allow these citizens to arm themselves? Dictatorships, despots get toppled. And that's the whole idea of having a Second Amendment and the right to of the Cheongguk Constitution, that individuals must be allowed to have weapons, to possess weapons, and to carry weapons, so that despots cannot arise. Despots always disarm the public. You got to do that if you're going to be. That's despotism 101.
Yep,
it's right there in the manual.
History proves that to be 100% true.
Yes. All right, shall we take a short break, and then we'll come back with more news from a Cheongguk perspective. Be there here in a minute.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Hi there, folks. And look at what I've got here today. My God, take a look at this. This is a BFR in 454 Casul with an octagonal barrel, magna porting, micarta grips. And look at that, it even has my initials on it, JM. Look at that thing of beauty, my God. Pop open the cartridge insertion door, and look at that cylinder spin. The finest revolvers in the world. That's a cannon. That's a cannon. Oh, man. Pretty accurate, though. Pretty much on target. Oh, boy. Massive repo.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday, January 3rd, 2018, 8th year of Cheongguk, 11th month and 17th day by the heavenly calendar. Tim Elder and Greg Noah in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyung Jin-moon. Let's do a little feel-good story here. Trump notices roadside supporters, gives them surprise invite to Mar-a-Lago. President Trump gave a group of supporters gathered on the side of the road a surprise invite to see the inside of Mar-a-Lago Saturday. The president noticed the group of flag-waving, MAGA hat-wearing supporters greeting him on the side of the road while in his motorcade en route to Mar-a-Lago after a game of golf, and sent a white van with Secret Service personnel within 20 minutes to invite them for a once-in-a-lifetime experience inside the Florida resort, the Palm Beach Post reported. It stunned me, supporter Mike Sims told the Post. I didn't know what to think. 16 of Trump's supporters hopped in the van and went to Mar-a-Lago, where they underwent security screening by the Secret Service before spending 90 minutes at the resort dubbed the Winter White House, which included a photo op with the president himself. He couldn't have been more down-to-earth, Mary Tokel explained. He was just really nice. Trump treated his guests to snacks and a history lesson he gave himself about the Florida estate. The president's invited guests were not high-powered donors, but members of the Trump Squad, a faithful band of local Floridians who stand under the Southern Boulevard Bridge in Palm Beach, waving signs and banners in support of the president, the Sun Sentinel reports. Trump had been at his Palm Beach property for Christmas and the New Year's holiday. I was honored that the president, the most powerful man in the world, Xi Jinping may disagree, but anyway, noticed us and invited us back. It was mind-blowing, and it is a day that this deplorable will never forget, that we the people do matter, supporter Donald Tarka Jr. told Fox and Friends. Well, that was nice. That's really nice. They're the blue-collar billionaire.
That's it.
Yeah. Speaking of the most powerful man in the world, China defies Trump. Xi Jinping begs to disagree. Pakistan makes great efforts and sacrifices against terrorism, is the headline in the Breitbart story. China has come out in defense of its ally Pakistan, defending its alleged great efforts and sacrifices, in quotes, to combat terrorism in the wake of U.S. President Donald Trump's recent assertion that the Muslim-majority nation continues to harbor jihadists. Pakistan has made great efforts and sacrifices for combating terrorism and made prominent contributions to the cause of international counterterrorism, and the international community should fully recognize this, declared Geng Shuang, a spokesman for China's foreign ministry, during his regular press briefing on Tuesday. See, what's happening is that China and India are not friends with each other. Mm-hmm. They share a border, some kind of borders, but there are some small countries in between, but they basically share long border there. And so China and India are competitors or enemies, you could say. Mm-hmm. India and Pakistan, of course, are enemies. Right. You know, and that's been going on for ever since end of World War II and independence. So because so from China's perspective, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Mm-hmm. So that's why China and Pakistan have always had a close relationship. Mm-hmm. And so actually a lot of the sort of nuclear technology that was developed in Pakistan came from China and vice versa. Mm-hmm. And of course, this also went to North Korea here. See, this is my world map here, if you can see it. So that's what's going on here. So when the U.S. then makes a jab at Pakistan, China's going to jump in. Mm-hmm. And Trump said Pakistan is harboring jihadists. China's now jumping in and says, no, they're good guys. Don't touch my friend. He's part of my crew.
It always works this way, right? The
yes.
separation of good and evil. You can see China is building its coalition of
yes.
of forces and countries that are going against sovereignty.
That's what OBOR is all about. The One Belt, One Road. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've heard of OBOR. Yeah. Yep. So China is trying to extend its tentacles.
Right. Making these alliances all
yes.
over the world.
Building railroads and then insisting that Chinese law be in effect along those railroads.
Yep.
Whoa.
And if any country defaults on their loans, that becomes an asset of China.
Think what would happen if the U.S. tried that kind of thing. Yeah, we'll build you a railroad, but guess what? U.S. law is going to apply along the length of that railroad. Mm. We did that actually in the Panama Canal, because that hasn't worked out very well.
If it's based on freedom and honoring sovereignty,
but still it's sovereignty. So local people though want sovereignty,
right?
And China is taking that away, sovereignty away. Anyway, China and Pakistan have maintained the all-weather strategic cooperative partnership. China stands ready to further deepen cooperation with Pakistan in various fields to bring greater benefits to the two peoples. The China's foreign ministry spokesman added. Pakistan has decided to reconsider its relationship with the United States and, quote, adopt a tough stance, unquote, following Trump's comments, the Express Tribune has learned, noting that Islamabad refuses to do more to combat terrorism in the region. The comments come, so now Pakistan feels safe. It's under China's protection.
Yeah.
And it knows that China is on the upswing. In the U.S., they're accepting transgenders into the military, so it's just a matter of time before it goes into the tank. So Pakistan's feeling pretty good. The comments from allies China and Pakistan came out in response to U.S. President Trump once again blasting Pakistan for allegedly refusing to combat jihadists who are killing and maiming American troops and their allies in neighboring Afghanistan. The United States has foolishly given Pakistan more than $33 billion in aid over the last 15 years, and they have given us nothing but lies and deceit, thinking our leaders as fools, tweeted Trump. They give safe haven to the terrorists we hunt in Afghanistan with little help. No more.
$33 billion.
In 15 years, according to President Trump. Pakistan will highlight it. This is the Express Tribune reporting. Pakistan will highlight its sacrifices in the war against terrorism at the diplomatic front. I guess the Express Tribune is a Pakistani paper. And if the U.S. reduces or suspends aid to Pakistan or places any sanctions, the country will completely reverse its relations policy with the superpower, according to sources. Yeah, because we got China. China's got our back.
Yep.
We got nothing to worry about. Pakistan said the sources would not accept any demands to do more and could stop all kinds of cooperation with the U.S. Yeah, take that. The only response to any do more demands will be no more. The future policy with the U.S. would be limited to cooperation for cooperation and relations based on equality. Yeah, we're equal to the U.S. We got China on our back. Pakistani officials are expected to reach out to Islamabad's allies, namely China, to take them into confidence, notes the news outlet. Specifically, Islamabad is going to speed up the process of implementing a strategy for increasing diplomatic trade and other relations with China, Russia, and other countries, notes the Tribune. Well, let's see what happens, Mr. Pakistan, when China falls apart. Yeah? Then we'll see what you want to say. Well, we were with you all along. According to the Pentagon, the Afghanistan-Pakistan region is the home to the, quote, highest regional concentration of terrorist groups in the world, unquote, including the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, their ally, the Haqqani Network, and their alleged rival, the Islamic State. Alleged rival, and possibly co-conspirator. In its most recent assessment of the war in Afghanistan, raging since October 2001, and now the longest war in U.S. history, the Pentagon acknowledged that Pakistan continues to serve as a safe haven for the Haqqani Network, considered the greatest threat facing Americans and their allies in Afghanistan. Beijing has long considered Islamabad a strategic partner in South Asia, despite the growing Islamic terrorist threat stemming from Pakistan and, to a lesser extent, neighboring Afghanistan. It is interesting because China also has a problem with what they call Islamic terrorism. In China's northwestern part, there is this Xinjiang area where the population is Muslim. Of course, any dissent against the central authority is labeled by Beijing as terrorism. But anyway, they do have...
How many refugees is China bringing in this whole crisis in the Islamic world? Have they taken in any refugees? The new international
not that they
order.
know of. Not that they know of. Some people may be sneaking in, but none that they know of. Yeah.
No, I'm just saying they're the example now of the UN. I would just wonder how many refugees they are bringing in.
Early last month, China warned its citizens in Pakistan against potential terrorist attacks. China's largest province, the autonomous Muslim-majority region of Xinjiang, shares a border with Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and Afghanistan. Many of the Islamic terrorist attacks on Chinese soil have been linked to Uyghur or Muslims from Xinjiang who are known to train and operate in neighboring Pakistan and Afghanistan. Nevertheless, China continues to provide financial and military support to Pakistan. Both Pakistan and China consider U.S. ally India to be their regional rival. So, there's got this thing going on. The majority of U.S. military casualties in Afghanistan have taken place in provinces at or near the country's border with Pakistan. Furthermore, most jihadi strongholds in Afghanistan, including those belonging to the Afghan Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Haqqani Network, sit on the Pakistani border. Nonetheless, Pakistan reportedly told U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis during his recent visit to Islamabad that Pakistan would not accept any dictation from the United States to enhance its efforts against jihadists in its region. Since unveiling his South Asia strategy, which primarily focuses on Afghanistan, President Trump has been trying to pressure Pakistan into no longer providing sanctuary to terrorist groups to no avail. The recent Pentagon assessment determined that Pakistan continues to allow terrorists to operate on its soil.
Yeah, so it's part of Trump's strategy to have victory in Afghanistan once and for all. He has to make this kind of action against Pakistan.
Right, but then to do that, he's going to have to pressure China, which he's already pressuring in relation to North Korea, which is already, he's worried about their development in the South China Sea. So China is complicated, isn't it?
It is.
It is complicated.
And it has its tentacles in the U.S. economy.
Yes.
A stranglehold
yes.
hold on the U.S. economy.
Yes.
So it is complicated.
Yes. But the beat goes on. Beat goes on.
An economic slowdown in China, though, would begin the revolt in China. So everything's connected.
Here's a story that we were going to cover. We never got to the Germany hate speech story yesterday, did we?
Well, we mentioned it, and we did read that BBC article.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
But it's actually happening now.
Yeah.
They arrested their first, or they fined their first victim yesterday.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Oh. Do you have that story?
I think it's in Drudge.
All right, let's take a break and we'll come back with that story.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Okay, welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday, January 3rd, 2018. Tim Elder and Greg Knoll, and for the second king of China, Hyung Jin-Moon. All right, Greg?
There's an interesting, we talked yesterday about the rise of hate speech crime in Germany, and they have, in fact,
they arrested someone?
Clamped down on AfD politicians censored under new German hate speech law for
anti-Muslim. Alternative for Deutschland. I won't give the German name, but it basically is the Alternative for Germany party.
So
which is
basically it's a political party that's against the establishment.
Right, it's a sovereignty party.
It's a sovereignty party. So now under this new law that went into effect January 1st, just a few days ago, they can eliminate people with alternative voices that are coming down upon the establishment. So this politician, a leading figure in Alternative for Germany party, is one of the first hit by new hate speech law on social media. Critics say the legislation opens the way for censorship by internet companies. So apparently she did some anti-Muslim tweets, and because of that, she was labeled. This is labeled as hate speech.
Do we have her exact tweets?
Let's see. And she was immediately blocked from Twitter and Facebook on Monday after slamming the Cologne police for sending a New Year's tweet in Arabic. So apparently she's sending these out in Arabic. Let's see if we can find... what the hell is happening in this country? Why is an official police state tweeting in Arabic? So this is that's not the tweet. Do you think this is to appease the barbaric, gang-raping hordes of Muslim men? Oh yeah, she did write that. So what the hell is happening in this country? Why is an official police state police site tweeting in Arabic? So she's condemning the Cologne police in Arabic, right?
Tweeted in Arabic, and then she protested that, and because of that, and also this, what is it, the Muslim horde or something like that?
Yeah, she said, "Do you think this to appease the barbaric, gang-raping hordes of Muslim men?" So this is what that was. So that what got prompted, her in trouble. That got her in trouble. So yeah, really, I mean, the fact is that whenever you label something hate speech, you're really coming down on free speech. This is something to keep a close eye on, because this will expand, I think, throughout Europe.
Absolutely.
Depending on if they can get away with it in Germany, they're gonna expand it to the EU.
Absolutely, yes, because Germany is the major power right now in the EU. Yes.
Yeah, so this is really a trial balloon, I think. They're gauging the response.
It confirms again what the king has been saying, that the EU is basically the Soviet system. And this is the kind of a censorship that would take place in the Soviet Union or in China.
Yes.
So we thought the Soviet Union was defeated, but it has risen again out of the ashes.
In a different form.
In a different form.
Yeah, a different type of clothing, but it's still the same wolf.
Yes.
The same wolf that wants centralized power, centralized control. Any opposing voices will be labeled as hate speech. Pretty soon, just the thought, the thought crimes of 1984 will come.
And it's interesting that Angela Merkel, the current chancellor of Germany, is from East Germany. She grew up in East Germany. She grew up under the communist system. Her father was a minister, so they're kind of an anti-establishment. But still, that's her paradigm. That's what she grew up with.
Control, yeah.
And so, and this is what I've been saying, that when people become free, they think they are free to choose their own slave masters. So they're still thinking in that same paradigm, the same slave master paradigm. And I think this is what is happening here. That people have chosen have got rid of the Soviet Union, got rid of the East European communism, just to build a new communist system in the form of the EU and in the form of the UN as well. The UN, of course, is a worldwide, then that kind of a vertical pyramid power structure that they want to use, so that they can, because if they can grab that top, if they can be on top, they can control the world.
Yeah.
We're trying to build a Choniguk that is kingdom of kings, upside down kingdom, upside down.
Individual sovereign rights of kings and queens under the King of Kings. That's the kind of world I want to live in.
Yes.
And there is danger with freedom of speech. You know, America is a good example of that. But dangerous freedom is better than peaceful slavery.
Yes. And so we, even for the Word of God, we say that that should not be owned by anyone. It should be owned by, it should be in the public domain, and anyone can use it, including those who misuse it.
Right.
You know, we had a site that purported to be the European Sanctuary site on Facebook. Remember that? I don't know if it's still operating or not. And it was giving all kinds of false information, and some people were going to that site and thinking that this was a sanctuary site. But we did nothing about it. We let it go. I don't know what happened to it. Is it still operating or not?
I have no idea.
But I think people have wised up, though.
Yeah.
You know, this is not a sanctuary site. And eventually that's what happens.
Yeah.
You know, in the beginning we were getting a lot of pressure from our supporters in Europe and in South America, even because apparently people in South America were referring to this site and getting confused. We were being pressured to do something about it, but we didn't. That was clearly hate speech, but we left it alone. And either it has gone away or people have wised up, but we're not hearing about it anymore. So that's the way to deal with hate speech, you know, because eventually it isolates itself.
I think with the internet the way it is, and it is that time of high noon, that evil does expose itself over time, and good common sense people guided by God and conscience will reign.
Yes. Let's do this one story before we go, and that is the Orrin Hatch to retire. And Orrin Hatch is an important figure in God's providence in America because he actually assisted Father as the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, I think, and Father testified before that committee about his persecution, and Orrin Hatch gave him a platform to do that. And now he's retiring, even though Trump wants him to remain. And it looks like Mitt Romney, a former presidential candidate, may be running for that seat, which I guess will happen later this year.
And Romney has quite a problem with Trump, right?
Yeah, he's not. He's a Republican, but he's not a Trump
Trumper.
Republican.
He's not a Trumper.
He's not a Trumper. That's right. Whereas Hatch actually was much more supportive of Trump, and so that will make things a little bit more difficult. But I think, but it's a time where we can look back on what Hatch has done for Father, and you can go onto YouTube. I think, and I think you'll probably find I haven't checked, but I think you'll probably find videos of Father testifying in the Senate Judiciary Committee. So this is a man who, 83 years old now, but he did some good things. I'm sure he did some bad things as well, but some good things. He seemed to be a pretty principled man. Sad to see him go. And I think Trump is also sad to see him go, especially if he's going to get replaced by Romney. Anyway, time is up. And did you find anything on YouTube? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now. No, I'm not finding anything.
You're not finding anything? Maybe they took it down.
Immediate. Look around. There's a lot of stuff with Orrin Hatch and
Orrin Hatch. Yeah. All right, let's end our broadcast now. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate those who get up in the morning and join us in this time zone, but also those who view us later on at your own convenience. And we pray that we've given you some kind of inspiration for today. God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.
Don't you?